purpose of this meeting is to share information about encumbrances and expenditures, contracts that have been awarded, changing needs in the community, and projections of future need, and to engage the public in a debate about how future coronavirus aid relief and economic security CARES Act grant money is spent. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Councilmember Dunaway. Excuse me.
Present.
Councilmember Days.
Here.
Councilmember Gray.
Present.
Madam Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you so much. This committee takes official notice of and admits into evidence all St. Louis County ordinances and resolutions. Excuse me. Good morning, everyone. These past 7 weeks, this Oversite Committee has met to discuss, sometimes quite passionately, how St. Louis County CARES Act money is spent, who is making decisions, and the process through which those decisions are being made. We've discussed at great length the role of procurement rules in the acquisition of county goods and services within and outside of emergencies, and where diversity, equity, and inclusion are and are not considerations of the importance this committee deems appropriate. In addition to unpacking all of the above, the St. Louis County Council is now faced with questions from our community about the role of police in the delivery of public safety services in a time with a new police chief, a new police board, and public exasperation of a status quo that isn't working for our communities of color. In order to meet the needs of this committee, while also conserving bandwidth for our overall council in addressing COVID funds, police reform, and diversity, equity, and inclusion, effective immediately, this Oversight Committee will meet every other week. This in no way hinders my commitment to government transparency and accountability, nor my commitment to ensuring that the CARES Act money is used to support our communities most in need. I will continue to work regularly with the County CARES team in between our biweekly public meetings, and will stay apprised of changing priorities in the community and updates to our budget. My hope is that we will use the off weeks to focus on DEI, ongoing conversations with our new police chief, and building momentum for transformation in our delivery of public safety services. Cindy, I'll hand the meeting over to you for this week's presentation.
Great. Thank you, Chairwoman Dunaway, and good morning, council members. As I usually do, I like to look at the, or provide to you all a present looking at this in the 3 buckets around our humanitarian, around economic rescue, and of course around public health. So if you could advance the first slide. So we all know the purpose around our humanitarian grants to really meet the basic needs of our county residents. Go to the next slide, please. So just to update everybody on where we are with the RFPs. We issued those earlier this month. We have the humanitarian response grant applications. Those are ones that we've issued earlier this month, and they're due on June 17th. We've got about 110 applications that are in progress, 5 that have actually been submitted. Of those, it looks like about $9.3 million, but only 10% of organizations have actually submitted. So those are in process. The humanitarian team has been answering questions. As you all know, there's been probably 4 webinars that have been scheduled to help respond to questions. And again, these are grants designed to be given to nonprofit organizations, 501c3 organizations. The child care relief grant applications, those are actually due on June 30th. And so the team has also been in answering questions with regard to those, and particularly around technical. Any comments or questions around the humanitarian RFPs and where we stand on those?
Yes, can you back the slide up, please? To the 10%, something you said about 10%.
Oh, what I was talking about is,
Get a clear understanding on that.
so what we've got about 110 organizations that have kind of given indications to us that they're likely going to submit an application. We've only had 5. And so this is very much, I was just trying to give the council a look in terms of what's happening out there and the level of interest. So
Okay,
it's still early, and we've got until actually tomorrow until everything gets
Right.
provided to us.
Okay, so I was trying to be clear on how you have 110.
I know the math
Only
doesn't quite
10%.
equal up. It's
Right.
very
So you're
interesting
saying
right now.
they just informed you of their interest in applying.
Exactly.
10%.
Exactly.
Actually.
Exactly.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. So Chris, if you could, no other questions, if you can advance the slide, and I'll talk a little bit about the economic recovery efforts.
Madam Chair. Madam Chair.
Sorry, Councilwoman Days.
Yes, I wanted to ask a question of Cindy, please. Cindy, and this humanitarian effort is led by Jason Purnell, is that correct?
No, actually, the humanitarian effort, Councilwoman, is led by Deborah Patterson.
Okay.
She with Jason is a part of that effort, I would say, in terms of who one consults with. But it's actually Deborah is leading it along with our county staff here and others around the community.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
So on the economic recovery, Chris, if you want to advance the slide one more. We can talk about our small business relief program. You can see the numbers here. We had almost 1,700 applications, valid applications that have been submitted, which the funds, requested funds are at $19.3 million. And also, I just wanted to let the council know that of those applications, 18.9% of those applications were submitted by minority-owned businesses. 36.4% were submitted by female-owned businesses. Again, that's 18.9% minority-owned and 36.4% women-owned.
Chair, may I ask a question, please?
Yes, Councilwoman Days.
Okay, when we get these, and I'm not sure if this has been addressed previously, I think it's important to know the process that we're going through here. So even though we have 1696 applications as you have here, the individual council members will not necessarily get all of those. Is that correct?
Oh, that is correct. And you'll see, Councilwoman, in my next slide, you'll see how many those are per district.
Okay,
So,
yes, my concern is making sure the applications that were denied, I am going to need to know, why they were denied, and so that when I get a call, I will have that information, because as it seems now, the accounting firm is going to go through these and weed them out as to who exactly is eligible to continue on in the process. Is that correct?
that is correct. And so none of these yet have been denied per se. These are the applications that came through because you'll recall we had well over 3,000 who initially submitted an application, and for whatever reason, it could have been they decided they didn't want to participate any longer or whatever, the number dropped off as we expected that it would. And so this is the number that we're left with. It then goes to the accounting firm. They're all currently at the accounting firm. There will be a review there, and then they'll also then send it on. So the reason that they wouldn't make it to your office on those in your district are only because for whatever reason they were not in compliance.
Okay,
We will certainly
I
let you
will know
what
that,
those are.
and will the applicant know that as well?
Yes. And so we need to talk through, and I know Kevin McKenna has been in contact with your offices to really determine the best way in terms of if you have more applicants than you want to give money to, or you decide you don't want to fund a particular business. We'll need to talk through how you want to actually issue those denials. If you want it to come from your office, from the council member's office, if you would prefer that it come from the county cares team who's working on this. I mean, I'm open to what the council recommends here.
Well, I have to think on that one. I'm not sure exactly right now, but I just want to make sure that because I will be getting the calls if for some reason this business is not selected. I'm sure I will be getting the calls. You won't be getting those calls. So, all right. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
And just so that the council is aware, Madam Chair, we will still have our helpline up. It's still currently up as well. So if there's any questions or any comments, that we still are answering the phones and also responding to the emails as well. But
Let me ask another question here, if you don't mind.
Councilwoman Days.
Thank you. We had we're supposed to have some company that's supposed to be answering questions. They were answering questions regarding the small business program. Is that correct?
Well, what we've had set up, Councilwoman, is we've had an in-house, if you will, team that's been responding to any kind of emails that have come in as well as calls. So we had individuals here who are answering that. What we're doing now is we are in the process of having an external call center that we've hired that will be able to answer calls as well. And so that call center should be set up and going next week.
Now, is that only for the small business program, or is that for any program that we're putting forward here?
It will be for any program that we have putting forward.
Okay. Thank you.
Also answering a lot of questions just around, coronavirus in general.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. So,
Madam Chair. Sorry.
So is there any other questions on this particular slide? If not, I can move to the next slide, which provides all of the applications by district. Councilwoman Days, to answer your earlier question, if you see here on this slide, you'll see the number of applications by district. And these are the number of applications that have actually gone on to Reuben Brown, the accounting firm, for it to then validate these particular applications. So you can see here that the number. And then if you look at the next slide, if there's no questions, you can see the requested funds by district. Now, you'll note that some of these districts are over the 2.5 million. Some are under the 2.5 million. And so, once the validation is done by the accounting firm, assuming these numbers stay constant, then decisions will have to be made in terms of how members want to disperse the funds. If they want to exclude some individuals, if they decide they want to change how the funding works, and let's say instead of giving everybody exactly what they asked for, maybe they lower the amount by a certain percentage. And we can talk through that and work with each of the council districts to offer recommendations as to how to best work through that.
I have a question, Madam Chair.
Councilwoman Gray.
Pardon me. The previous slide, which you don't have to go back. Originally, or I won't say originally, in the past, there had been a line or a graph that said unknown or something like that. People who weren't. Has that been rectified? Because I don't see that. Or it's
Yes,
very low.
it has
The number is
been.
very low.
It has been.
Okay.
What we've done here is to call the individual businesses and find out and try to help solve their problems. Maybe they had a wrong address, maybe they had an incorrect amount. There were a myriad of issues, and we've actually rectified that here at the county cares team.
Okay, thank you. Phone.
So later this week, members should start to receive from Reuben Brown those applications that have been confirmed or verified. And so those will start to trickle in, with the final deadline being July 6th in order to get all of the information in from the council. And again, we will work with the council offices in helping them ascertain the best way to either issue denials or to figure out the appropriate methodology in terms of either lessening the amount or how the member would like to do it. Again, we've left those decisions up to each of the council members, but we're certainly here to offer support. Okay, Chris, do you want to advance to the next slide, please? I just also wanted to inform the county that we've gotten our economic rescue team underway. This is the committee that's chaired by Rick Stevens, along with 5 other steering committee members. They met for the first time yesterday. They have numerous individuals, I think well over 40, who will be on the working groups. You see how we've kind of got those listed: small business and industry, community development, nonprofit and alternative lending, minority and immigrant-owned small business, and workforce development and training. And what this team hopes to do is really be the eyes and ears. So as we open throughout the county, what additional programs are needed, what things should we be changing, and so this would be, we hope, a great mechanism and a great way to get input into what the county cares team needs to do next. There's no other questions. Chris, if you can advance to the next slide, please. I just included the revised draft CARES budget, council members. There's no changes to the budget amounts, but what we did, I think last time, if you'll look up under health and saving lives, we had the community health provider grant program as well as the mental health provider grant program under one, and we've split it out so the members could have more visibility around what we were doing there. And then as well as under the child care relief program, the Humanitarian, we also split out the child wellness. That was always in there, but we made it a separate line item. So if there's any questions on the revised budget. Okay. There were some questions at the last meeting regarding upcoming expenditures exceeding 100,000, and so I wanted to include these so you could see here what those expenditures would likely be. You can see test kits and lab services, $1.45 million. Prevalent study, $2 million. This is a study that the Department of Public Health is doing with Washington University and St. Louis University. The COVID at home kits, $2.5 million. And then if you look at the county employee and constituent safety, we're estimating, or the county's estimating, that the expenditures could be anywhere from $2 to $3 million for additional PPE. And we have people available to answer any questions if you have some specific questions regarding these expenditures. If any of the council members do.
I have a question on this one, please.
Councilwoman.
Madam Chair.
Councilwoman Days.
Thank you. I want to look at this county employee and constituent safety PPE. What does that include?
So who do we have on from the county to can respond to this? Look here. We have Michelle. Michelle, are you on?
Yes, ma'am, I am.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Councilwoman Days, the PPE for county employees and constituent safety, that's going to include things like hand sanitizer throughout county buildings, masks for county employees, gloves, constituent safety. I believe that is referring to some of the community things that the health department is doing, making sure we have masks in places like childcare facilities, and the general public.
Okay, child care facilities. Now we're offering grants for that. So the PPE is not included in the grants for the child care. That's not included in this.
I believe, Spring, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe we had started, as some of these places started to reopen, I believe we had gone ahead and given some out to child care facilities in St. Louis County, just because out of the warehouse, simply because PPE was not yet available through CARES Act. Does that sound correct?
That's correct. And PPE is hard to buy sometimes, and so some childcare facilities may buy that with the dollars that they receive, but we have also given some out just because we were protecting some of the groups that were already operating. This would also include, some of the recommendations around like plexiglass barriers at some of our public-facing functions in a wide variety of facilities, making sure that we had like the ability for people to come and conduct government services safely. And so there's a bit of that in there, as well as PPE available to anybody coming into business in our county buildings, and a wide variety of those pieces. So it's really making sure that there's a lot of operational pieces for people to do business with us, and then some of the other groups that we're supporting that are constituents.
I am not sure if I asked this question before or did I ask it of you, Spring. I know that the county employees are now having to have go through safety check, if you will, but there has been metal detectors added to that. And I need to know, where did that come from? Who authorized, and why do we need to have folks going in employees' purses and things like that before they enter a building?
I am not involved in the security conversation, ma'am, so I don't
Who
have
would
that.
that be then?
I don't actually.
Woman, I think that may be Mike Chapman, and we can certainly relay your question to him and have him get back with you.
I know I've asked it before. I don't know of whom I ask it, but I'm just very curious about that, because I think Councilwoman Gray had a concern about that at the previous meeting. That really is, if you're talking about sanitary, that's absolutely not sanitary as far as I'm concerned. But I just want to know, why is that necessary for county employees to go through a metal detector? We have not had that before. And so with COVID, all of a sudden we have to have a metal detector for our employees. I'm just curious about that.
I'll certainly relay your question on to Mr. Chapman, Councilwoman.
Thank you.
Yes, if I may interject. I did have a concern. This was not at the last meeting, but I had mentioned to Spring that it is a concern. It was actually a concern prior to COVID-19. I had gotten complaints from women who didn't think it was very sanitary for people to go actually put their hands in their purses to go through them. I've been to places and sometimes they'll use a stick or something. But as Councilwoman Days mentioned before, if the employees had not been going through this type of process prior to COVID, then why are they going through their bags now when it's even more of a concern of cross-contamination? So it's a health issue, not just someone not wanting people to go through their purses. It is, like I said, prior to, it was a concern as well. So, and I'm not even sure. Well, hopefully Mike can answer that question, but I think we probably need to go through whoever handles security. And I don't know what department that is.
This is Deanna. I might be able to help shed some light on this. With my understanding, when the public health order was instituted that we would need to do health screenings at our public buildings, the 41 building did not have any type of security in the concourse level. While we had it up at the front door off of South Central, we did not have anything coming in from the garages. That being said, Mark Cox and his security staff has always had an issue concerning the employee entrance there, and they're not being screened. And I do not want to speak for him, but his concerns that were raised were that if there was any the statistics show that if there's going to be a security issue, that it's more likely to be from an employee, not necessarily from the public, so that the screening should be added while they're doing the health screening at the same time in the concourse level. So we worked with Mark Cox from the facility side to give him the necessary resources to add in the health screening with the security aspect. The health screening, though, they should be wearing gloves. So if they are going through purses, that kind of thing, they should be having gloves on.
Well, actually, we also had a complaint from an employee that not only they don't have gloves or mask on. So that's another issue. And that's a major.
And we can certainly raise that to the police.
But, well, I think we're getting in the weeds or something else. So we do need to further discuss this, but not right now. Thank you, Dan.
No worries.
May I ask a question, Madam Chair?
Yes, Councilwoman Days.
So you have this set up at every St. Louis County building?
There is health screening available at every St. Louis County facility, yes, including parks facilities, operation facilities, all of our satellite offices, etc. The security aspect, as far as Mark Cox's staff, is only set up at a few locations that have needed security around the area. So I think we just added, we have it at Northwest Crossing, we have it at some of our revenue sites where there's money changing hands. I think we just added it to South Satellite, 41 South Central building there, and Justice Center and the courts facility. And we have some at the Met Center as well. I might be missing a few.
I guess it might be interesting. So either you don't have them all, or either you do have them all. It's at every building. A metal detector is at every building, or some of them have not been implemented yet.
No, ma'am. The health screening is at every building. The metal detectors are not at every building. They're at specific locations that have either been requested or where security sees a high need for it.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome.
Madam Chair, if there's no other questions on this particular page, Chris, perhaps we can move to the next. And there were questions from members last week around the actual police expenditures and the EOC and how those two come together. Michelle Ryan's also on, as you know, is on the phone. And so we thought we'd talk through this a little bit and be able to answer your questions. But you can see here, if you look at the percentage of actual police, I think it's all, Michelle would describe it as all police, but these were the actual expenditures. Michelle, do you want to speak to the council members on this particular graph?
Of course. So I'm not quite sure why any of them were marked police, as these 6 expenditures that are listed in this on this slide are the ones that are marked police, but those purchases were actually made out of EOC logistics. So I don't believe that any of the expenditures should have been categorized under police, because everything on that spreadsheet was done for COVID response through the logistics office here. But if you'd like, I can just tell you what these, I can give you some more information on these 6. The emergency computer batteries, we had a large influx of people out here when the COVID response began. We did not have nearly enough computers. We didn't want to spend money on new computers for a response that, we didn't know how long it was going to last. So we borrowed computers from the state, their regional teams, and we simply put new batteries in them. So instead of spending $900 for 12 per computer for 12 computers, we spent $900 on 12 batteries. The emergency batteries for thermo, that's one of those descriptions that gets cut off in an Excel cell. Those are for thermometers that were purchased, both those next 2 lines. We had to buy AAA batteries to go in all of the thermometers that were purchased, and those thermometers were bought for a combination of entities. Some went to the Department of Health, some went to first response agencies who were doing screenings. We put 1 at each of the St. Louis County police precincts. The next one is portable air cleaner. That's actually multiple portable air cleaners that were purchased to put in all 8 county police precincts. And there are, this 1 line portable air cleaner for that amount is the only one marked as police. But if you look at that larger spreadsheet, there are several of those. We bought numerous portable air cleaners to go, not just in the precincts, but also in all of the workspaces in police headquarters, and then all of the workspaces out here at the emergency operations building. The emergency batteries, that's another one that was for the thermometers. And then the AT&T telephone account, those were, hang on, I'm looking at the spreadsheet real quick because I made notes. Those were phone lines that we activated for the COVID response to distribute to those who were assisting us in the response so that they weren't using their personal devices. Those lines, some of them have already started to be canceled as the response has sort of stabilized and we don't need as many people. They turn their phones in when they go back to their regular duties, and we've deactivated those lines. Does anyone have any specific questions on those expenditures? Hopefully I've explained them well.
Well, question, Madam Chair, please.
Councilwoman Days.
Your initial statement was that these are not police expenditures. Will the budget, I guess that's to Cindy, will the budget reflect that? Because we were looking at it seemed a little heavy-handed on the police side. Will the budget reflect this change?
Yes, it will. And again, it's kind of labeled police EOC, and so it was difficult to see what was actually how it all intermingled. But yes, we will change that so it reflects more just the EOC.
Okay, thank you. Let me back up one other question too, as we had the upcoming expenditures. I've always, I want to make sure as we're looking at these expenditures, particularly for your test kits, your PPE, all of that, that we have the DEI is aware of that. It's been sort of a challenge to make sure the DEI, Department of Equity and Inclusion, is part of this process. And so I need to make sure that as we're going through this, that DEI is aware and is able to weigh in when it comes to these expenditures. So I need your assurance that that is happening.
Councilwoman, I can speak to that. And the answer is yes. I mean, one of the things that we've attempted to do is to give them a list of upcoming expenditures. So, you know, we can't notify certain vendors, obviously, but we can notify associations of upcoming expenditures. And so Ms. Irby, as well as Fran, are engaged in this, and we're continuing to work together to make sure that we do have a solid approach to our diversity spend and how we're doing this.
I had previously inquired about the cone of silence being activated, and did that activate before or after DEI was involved? And so I was told that even though they had the cone of silence, that DEI can still participate in that process. I'm not sure how that works. If you have a cone of silence that says no one from the county can interact once that cone of silence is in place. So I'm just trying to make sure that we are on the same page when it comes to that, you know, this is not, you know, do it later and, you know, we come back and as an afterthought. Again, it's not an afterthought that we have DEI at the table all the time in the beginning. Okay.
I agree with that. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. That's the end of my question. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Councilwoman Days.
Is there any other questions on the EOC or the police expenditures?
I have a question.
Chairwoman Clancy.
Yeah, are we getting any money from SEMA or FEMA for any of these costs? Or is this strictly through the CARES Act?
Ma'am, this is Michelle.
Yes.
Typically in a disaster, there is no stimulus funds, and all of our reimbursement for expenditures is sought through the Stafford Act, which we use FEMA for. I believe at the moment we're on figuring out what we can run through the Stafford Act to get 75% reimbursement on, which will leave more money in the CARES Act pot for other things. Personal protective equipment is going to be one of those things. Our EOC operations are always covered under the Stafford Act. So there are other avenues besides CARES for us to get some of this back.
Got it. Thank you, Michelle.
Absolutely.
And Chairwoman, I might also add that for example, that the CARES team is focused on is on the actual COVID relief funds. There's other funding that's coming through the CARES Act, but what we're focused on, the 173, is just related to the COVID spend. There is additional funding that's coming through the actual CARES Act, grants available, but from what the CARES team is focused on with regard to the budgeting on this, it's really related to the 173 million that was allocated. Okay. Chris, would you advance the slide, please? So we've had a lot of conversation around the municipalities and our questions that are before the United States Treasury, but what we've decided to do is to again, keep this in reserve, but to develop a grant application for municipalities to seek reimbursement that's consistent with our legal interpretation of the current guidelines. And we're working with our outside counsel to do this. These would be for COVID-related expenses, needs-based. We would seek the input of this council in terms of developing the appropriate application. But again, want to start working on that, keeping this in reserve, but making sure that it's consistent with what our current understanding is around needs-based and COVID-related expenses. So I just wanted to alert the council to that and where we were headed in that direction.
Madam Chair,
Councilwoman Days.
thank you. And this is probably going to lead into number 4 on the agenda, but I need to get a specific answer about the abilities of municipalities to access these CARES funding. I'm sure all the other council members get the email from the Municipal League and other members, other munis regarding this. And there seems to be a difference of opinion, if you will, as to how we can disseminate these funds to the various municipalities. And I need to have a specific answer on how we do that. Is it only by the grant application or that we're talking about? Are we able to write checks? Are we only able to assist in responding to a concern that they have? How is this going to work? I just don't have an answer for that. And I'm getting that question asked almost daily. Anybody?
Well, Chairwoman, if I can speak to that.
Yes, please.
Again, you're exactly right, Councilwoman. There's a lot of unknowns. That's why we put this in reserve, and that's why we asked the U.S. Treasury for guidance on this, because we don't know. But what we are doing is working with our outside counsel to see, is there a way to develop a grant process? And what we do know is that it would need to be needs-based, and we know that it would need to be related to COVID expenses. And so we would be working with the council members here and getting your input on what that grant process would look like. And again, we are just beginning this. We have kept these dollars in reserve because, to your earlier statement, we just simply don't know what is admissible and what is not. And we don't know what else could be coming from the federal government with regard to funding. Will there be additional funding, as was passed in the House, with regard to budget shortfall makeup? Will there be more leeway granted for some of these grants? We don't know that yet, but we are beginning to explore the possibility of doing a grant application process that's needs-based, and it's based on COVID-related expenses.
So the treasurer has not really given you a definitive answer on that. Am I hearing that correctly?
That is correct, Councilwoman. Not as of yet. So that's why we're holding it in reserve, but we're beginning to explore the possibility of a grant application for those expenses related to COVID and for needs-based.
I don't want to misrepresent the Municipal League, but I do think that their opinion is different. I do think that I'm not sure how to say this. I think that they, or at least what I'm hearing or understanding, is that the 47 million that has been requested, and I believe that came came from the Municipal League as a dollar amount. Is that right?
That's correct.
Did we ever find out how they got there?
No, we did not. I don't know the answer to that question. That was a question I think we should probably direct to the municipalities in terms of what their methodology is.
And I think, and again, I'm not misrepresenting, but this is sort of how I read their response to this, that they feel that the money can just equitably be distributed among them. I believe that is their position. And you are telling me that that is, at least at this particular point, that is not the case.
That is not the case from what we see. And again, we're working with our legal counsel on this, Councilwoman, but what our initial thoughts are is that it would be A, related to COVID expenses, and B, is that it would be needs-based. It's very difficult to just, I don't think it's really it's within our jurisdiction to be able to just issue money without it being needs-based or based on actual expenses. That's our interpretation of the law right now, or of the CARES Act. So that's how we're working with our outside counsel to be able to develop some sort of a grants program.
Well, we do have 89 at this point. I think we have 89 munis. And so, yeah, I don't want this to be set up as some kind of, some kind of an adversarial, situation that we're dealing with. So I was not aware that we were going to be looking at it in terms of, I guess, grants. So we have to explore that. But that's fine for this particular point. But I'll talk about that a little bit later. Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair.
This is Spring, Madam Chair. Do you mind if I say something?
Please, Spring.
I did have a thought about this, just in terms of, I know that you all will be planning and thinking forward, and I don't have an answer or a solution, but I do have something that I want to just advocate for your thinking in terms of the municipalities and needs and expenses that have already been created. In that, through this emergency response, from the beginning, we have had municipal members that were fire EMS and some police and others who came to the call of the county in the emergency and worked tirelessly, like from day one, or showed up at the emergency operations center, took tasks, led groups, built programs and products, and committed resources during that time. And so whatever process that you come up with in terms of how to think about that, I would say that I can't speak to any other resources that they may have expended in any other way, shape, or form. But I can tell you that from the day we declared an emergency, there are a number of municipal partners who came to the call of the county in the emergency and worked every day. And there are miles of documentation in the EOC for the forms that they fill out for every day of their participation, every list of who they all are in each of the plans. And so whatever process you put forward for grants or things like that, I would just advocate for that, because I have never led a public health emergency in St. Louis County before. I had, so this is the first time I had one. And I do want to advocate for a process that does include it, whether it's a grant-based piece or some level that includes what munis contributed in terms of the staff that came to the EOC and worked at that time. So I want to advocate for that, because it was an incredible and humbling experience for me to be over there in that, and how many of those people came and worked. And there's documentation for that. I just wanted to kind of add that point, because it meant a lot to me.
Madam Chair.
Councilman Harder.
Cindy, have you met with Pat Kelly of the Municipal League?
I have not, Councilman.
Okay. He has met with most of the municipals and our executive board, of which I'm on, and they have some ideas on how this could be distributed. So I would encourage you to set up an appointment to talk with him about that. And he could probably give you an idea of the anticipated need and what has been spent already by some of the municipalities. He's been in pretty close contact with them, and maybe the two of you can come up with a system that will equitably distribute these funds to the different municipalities.
Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Councilwoman Days.
I want to ask a question of Spring, please. Is she still on?
Yes, ma'am, I'm here.
Okay. So you're saying that these first responders or personnel came from the various municipalities, and they were continued to be paid from their home office or home department, if you will. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, they work, normally in other responses for municipality, but they came and dedicated like like all of their hours or a bunch of their time or some of their resources to the emergency at the request of the county.
Okay. All right. I just wanted to be clear as to what their contribution was, but thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Madam Chairwoman, this is Michelle Ryan. May I just add to that in any disaster, it is very common for multiple first response agencies to work a single incident together. It is also common for the home agency, the one that actually is taking ownership of whatever the disaster is, to pay their salary for the hours worked and then seek reimbursement through the Stafford Act to get some of those funds back.
I like to say something.
Councilwoman Gray.
Just finished. Yes, I visited the EOC, and I did see the various different munis who had people out there, and it was great actually. I would have to say I'm not sure if it was the locations of those munis were pretty spread out. It's not really like a lot came from North County or a lot came from West County. So just so that people don't think all of my munis were there, just to give you a frame of reference. So not all munis were there. And I'm not saying that because I think what she just said was great, but I don't want people to think that because of that, all munis will get something. So I'm talking on the other way, not saying they shouldn't get something. So just to be cautious to not think that, oh, well, my muni was there, so they'll get part of this so a lot of them weren't there too. So I just want you to be clear and cautious that we got to make sure that every muni is kind of treated, gets the same amount, or not the same amount, but it's treated fairly. So that's all I'm saying. But it was a great thing. Like she said, a lot of municipalities were out there doing logistics, and just a lot. It was nice. It was very nice.
I have a question, Madam Chairwoman.
Yes.
So I absolutely think that municipalities and municipal workers, whether that's EMS, fire, or police department folks, need to be appropriately and fairly compensated for their contributions to St. Louis County during this crisis. However, I also need to better understand how the municipal league and the municipal request is going to be proportioned to those various public safety entities. And I use that term public safety because that's the term that they have used in the communications to us as to where they want to see the federal CARES Act money go when it comes to municipalities. I need to know more about how it's going to be broken down. I need to know more about, and I think this has come up, but expenses that have already been incurred. I want to see documentation of that. I want to know if they have made similar requests to state and federal policymakers for relief. I want to know about the other opportunities they have to get relief from places outside of St. Louis County. And I also want to know what transparency mechanisms are going to be put in place by municipalities. How are they going to include residents in decision making? And how will residents know where the money is being spent within their municipalities? And, considering a lot of the conversation we've had in several places over the past 2 weeks, I also want to know more about some of the municipal police department policies, particularly around use of force. If we are going to be giving some money to municipal police departments, even if it is for COVID response, I want to understand more about the specific investment that's being made. And these are all questions that I have sent over to the Municipal League and I'm waiting responses for, but I just need to know a lot more information about this request, and I look forward to getting that information. Yes, we have a significant amount of federal money from the government for COVID relief. However, it is still not enough, and I do not take this request lightly. $47 million is a lot of money. And even though we might have a couple of opinions from good sources that say that it is permissible within the law for us to share money with municipalities, we need to be careful and thoughtful, because I think the ultimate question isn't necessarily about what's legally permissible. It's about where are we going to make the biggest difference to providing relief to people in St. Louis County during this crisis. And there's a lot of answers for that. So I just need to know a lot more before I feel comfortable proceeding in this conversation.
Madam Chair, may I speak in response to Chairwoman Clancy? I wanted to tee this up for the committee to let them know that we were exploring this. No decisions have been made. We are seeking input, working with guidance, external legal, as well as the members of the council here. And no decisions will be made without the council's full input and knowledge of how to proceed. But I did want to let you know that we were considering that, so it could be on everyone's radar.
Understood. Thank you.
Is that everything from you, Cindy?
That is all from me, Chairwoman. Happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions about Cindy's presentation or other questions unrelated to today's presentation? Councilwoman Days, you have agenda item number 4. Would you like to take a stab at it, or do you want to wait for a couple weeks?
No, I just want to kind of lay some things out, because I think what this previous conversation leads into this, because as we look at the various municipalities and how they are going to recover, it's not just public safety that they're going to be that should be considered when we're looking at this. So again, and to Cindy and the CARES team, I'm looking at trying to put together a strategic plan for this recovery for our municipalities, and specifically. So we're looking at health outcomes, we're looking at job placement, we're looking at job creation, the businesses. We're trying to handle a lot of that with the small business relief. But there are other aspects of this, and particularly in the region north, that we really need to concentrate on in terms of the economic recovery for these municipalities. And of course, I'm going to be leaning toward a comprehensive plan to that. So as I'm saying that, I'm expecting Cindy to come in and look at this holistically in terms of how our munis are going to move forward with this. They have to move forward past COVID. And I want to make sure that, and I want to be part of this, because see, I wasn't aware of this grant application that you're looking for. I wasn't aware of that. But you know, if that's kind of the way it turns out, then we have to look at that as a possibility. But there may be other ways that we can handle this as well. But I just wanted to kind of put that pin and keep that in the forefront, that we're looking at a strategic plan for the entire municipal areas. And those are the things that I mentioned earlier, or what we're going to be looking at in terms of their recovery. Certainly public safety is part of that, but that's only a part of it. And I don't want to just concentrate on the public safety aspect, but that included with all the other aspects of a recovery that we're going to need. So that's basically what I'm looking at. I will be working with Cindy and her team in trying to put together this strategic plan, looking at how we're going to go forward in making sure that we utilize these funds in the best effort, in the best way possible.
Thank you, Councilwoman Days.
Any questions? I get to ask that now. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Any other discussion or comments before we move to public comment?
I just have one, Madam Chair.
Yes, Councilman Fitch.
Good morning, everyone, or afternoon. I want to make sure I heard Chairwoman Clancy's comments. Maybe I didn't hear them correctly. Did I hear a discussion that we would limit COVID-19 funds to municipalities if they did not have, in our opinion, proper use of force policies? Did I hear that correctly?
No, you did not hear that correctly.
Maybe you can explain what you meant by that.
My question is about, I would like to understand, it's a big picture question. I would like to understand if we are going to be distributing money to municipalities for public safety. I would like to better understand how that money is going to be broken down. If some of that money is going to go to police departments, I would like to better understand what some of their policies are, because I want to make sure that we are getting a good investment.
Okay, and if you disagree with their policy, then what?
I'm evaluating and gathering data right now. I don't know yet, Councilman Fitch.
I just wanted to make sure what I was hearing wasn't that we were going to tell municipalities, or we're going to tell Bell Ridge, you cannot have COVID money because we disagree with your use of force policy. That we're not going to go in that direction.
I can't tell you that right now. I'm gathering data and I'm evaluating things. I will tell you, though, that I've heard from quite a few of my constituents who have gone that far and said, no, I do not think that we need to be giving federal relief money to police departments that are going to have, that are not going to have restrictive use of force policies in place. And so in order for me to be able to respond to constituents, I also need to be able to gather data about that.
Okay, I just want to make sure we don't confuse COVID-19 response with other police reform discussions and things like that, because that's not what COVID-19, the CARES Act money is for navigating the impact of the COVID-19 outbreak, not for political purposes. That's all I have. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Any other discussion or comments or questions?
Yes, I'd like to kind of further discuss or reiterate with what Councilwoman Clancy says. I think, like she said, we should look into those things. Now, I don't know, and she doesn't know, none of us know how the money will be distributed, but it is something that's a good idea to, oh, I keep forgetting about my video, to look into and see what's going on in these other areas of law enforcement. But again, a plan has not been put in place for the municipalities, and I was going to actually add, I only have a few in my district, so I'm really not apprised of what the money is needed for in the munis, because that's something that I don't have to or have not had interaction with at this point. So again, just to reiterate, there's no plan at this point to my knowledge, and from what Cindy Brinkley said, this is just something that they came up with. And I think it'll help. I think it'll be more helpful, because if people fill out for the grants, they will provide information that would give some clear and concise determinations on how and who should get the funding, because all municipalities are not equal. There are some that are more disadvantaged than others. Again, some who participated in the EEOC program out in the Creve Coeur, I think it is, or wherever it is some that did not. So there's no one fit all for those munis. And I think, especially in Councilwoman Day's area. So I wanted to add that.
And if I may, Chairwoman Dunaway, I will add that I think my question is big picture unintended consequences. We need to be careful about how we use this money so that we don't unintentionally further do harm in communities. And I agree with you, Councilman Fitch, that the issue at hand here is about COVID-19. It is about pandemic relief. And that is also part of why I need to know a lot more information about this municipal request so that I feel confident that the money will go directly towards COVID-19 COVID-19 related responses. I'm missing a lot of that information right now, and it's essential for me to be able to say whether or not I support this request without getting that information. And that's the conversation that I'm hoping to have with Pat Kelly, and that I have invited him to respond to.
Thank you to all council members participating in this. Are there any other comments or questions? Okay, I'm hearing none. Diane, I believe we're ready for public comment.
Yes, Madam Chair. So we have two comments today. The first is from Pat Kelly. As we know, the Executive Director of the Municipal League of Metro St. Louis, 11911 Dorset Road, Maryland Heights, Missouri. Dear Chairwoman Clancy and committee members, last week the Municipal League of Metro St. Louis went on record as supporting the distribution of the $47 million CARES Act stimulus funds for municipal public safety expenses on a per capita basis. At the meeting, the committee talked briefly about the $47 million allocation. It is the position of the League that the stimulus funds cannot be used to offset revenue shortfalls incurred by municipalities and can only be used for public safety related expenses. The $47 million is a 3-month estimate of municipal public safety expenses. The League continues to maintain the position that county can distribute the funds to the municipalities for public safety expenses incurred between March 1st and December 31st, 2020. This opinion is supported by the 2 attached letters from attorneys Carl Lumley and William Ray Price Jr., former Missouri Supreme Court Justice. I have also included a spreadsheet showing the per capita distribution. The League is prepared to assist the county and your committee in evaluating and implementing the distribution process. The list of cities that have passed the resolution supporting an equitable distribution has increased from 23 to 29 this past week. They are Bonita Park, Richmond Heights, Pagedale, Northwoods, Jennings, Hazelwood, Frontenac, Florissant, Ellisville, Chesterfield, Bridgeton, Brentwood, Berkeley, Woodson Terrace, Maryland Heights, Glendale, Fenton, Clayton, Crestwood, Kirkwood, Manchester, St. John, University City, Hanley Hills, St. Anne, Ferguson, Creve Coeur, Twin Oaks, and Belle Noor. And Madam Chair, Mr. Kelly's attachments, the spreadsheet and the 2 letters will be made a part of the record. Our second comment comes from Tom Sullivan, 751 Syracuse Avenue, University City, Missouri. There are still many questions not being answered about purchases made from the $173.5 million federal CARES grant. It seems the committee has no intention of answering them. Last week, a $1 million contract for mostly empty motel suites was in the news following the Oversite Committee meeting. A big part of the story is that no one could explain it, and council members wanting to find out were cut off by Councilwoman Dunaway. As I have said, the Oversight Committee is providing no oversight as far as explaining the expenditures. It is only part of the effort to avoid public scrutiny. Last week I mentioned that Cindy Brinkley, lead advisor for the CARES Committee, has given the maximum contribution allowed to the Sam Page campaign. Executives at the company where she worked, the Centene Corporation, have given nearly $100,000 to the Page campaign and would likely give more. A few days later, Centene made a $20,000 campaign contribution to the Page campaign. The company's total to the Page campaign has now gone over $100,000. I do not think Ms. Brinkley should continue with such a conflict of interest. Though no longer employed by Centene, she still has close ties to the company and is likely receiving a pension from the company. I asked the county auditor if he has had further communications with the committee beyond the March 15th memorandum. He seems to be having problems providing an answer, but then he seems to have problems with everything. The committee can have no credibility as long as it continues to ignore citizen concerns or questions despite the stated purpose of the committee. Councilwoman Days suggested the committee may be no more than window dressing. It seems she was right. Thank you for listening to my comments. Madam Chair, that is all the comments for today.
Thank you so much. If there are no further comments or questions, I could certainly entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Do we have a second?
Second.
I think that's it. Thank you so much, everyone. This meeting is officially adjourned. See you in 2 weeks.